Hello, thanks for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's coverage of Town Meeting 2025. It'll be happening this year on March 4th. You may have gotten ballots in the mail already. Does Winooski mail ballots?
Upon request.
Upon request. So Winooski mails ballots upon request. You're watching this on CCTV, Town Meeting Television. You can find this and other forums at cctv.org/TMD2025. This is brought to you by generous underwriters. You can see them there on the screen. Tonight's program, we're going to hear from Bryn O'Cleef, who is running uncontested for a 2-year seat on the City Council. You're also running alongside Charles Judge for another of the 2 uncontested seats. Charles was unable to join us today. Bryn, welcome. And we're going to ask you a series of questions, have a little conversation, but also if you're watching this live, you are welcome to call in at 802-862-3966. So I'm sure that Bryn would be happy to talk with you, and we would love to hear from you. Welcome, Bryn.
Thank you.
So let's start with an opening statement. Just tell us who you are and why you're running for City Council again.
Yeah. So I was first elected in 2021 as a write-in candidate. I won with a recount by about 12 votes. So when you think your vote doesn't count, it certainly does. I've been a resident of Winooski for close to 15 years. I started off as a renter and have been a homeowner. It'll be 10 years as a homeowner in Winooski. So really very excited to just have Winooski as my home, and it really feels that way to my core. I moved to Vermont in 2009. I have my master's in environmental law and policy from Vermont Law School, and from that, I've always had an interest in policy and legislation, and I think that was kind of my segue into this role. And my interest in this role was I was participating and supporting on the Environmental Commission, helping Green Up Day get started back in 2012 when the moose ran through town. Some people might remember that. And then just participating as an interested resident in the Housing Commission calls and meetings, and with all of the momentum of the last 8 years, plus, it seemed like a really good opportunity to jump in, as scary as it can be, to throw my name into the ring. And it seemed like the timing was right, that I had the skills, that I was already engaged and well versed on a lot of the matters that were before council, and that I had an opportunity to provide some of my experience and expertise with policy development on council. So
Is this your 4th term?
So this will be my 3rd term.
3rd term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. And in the last 4 years, I've served on the Infrastructure Commission as the liaison. I've been on the Airport Commission. I also have been representing Winooski on the Chittenden Solid Waste District.
So airport's easier for people to understand. Chittenden Solid Waste. What's the Infrastructure Commission?
Sure. So that's everything from traffic calming, line striping, the basics, to larger projects, our capital projects like Main Street revitalization and the bridge replacement. Those types of things, all infrastructure projects, big and small, come to that commission before moving along to City Council for votes.
Great. And was there another committee that you sit on, or is it?
I'm also on the Green Up Day, but that's separate from City Council, my City Council role.
So one of the big things you do in the City Council is to work on crafting or paying attention to the city budget. The city manager, right, and the mayor will work together and craft a budget and bring it to you all, and you workshop that.
Yes.
You've got an $11.28 million city budget. Are you supporting that budget? I mean, you're bringing it, and what experience do you bring to that management?
So I'll start with, yes, I support the budget as proposed this year. We worked really hard to keep that budget increase as reasonable as we could, while also accounting for pre-negotiated salary increases and healthcare increases, which are affecting everyone statewide, I think, as well as the school budget. We'll get into in a minute. And we also are looking to allocate some funds at this Chittenden Solid Waste in my head, CCRPC, Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, for an equity director. So we're looking to partner with our neighboring municipalities to ensure that there's a role at the county level.
Have an equity director at the county.
At the county level.
Because Winooski had an equity director for a little while, and then that position hasn't been replaced. Is that correct?
It has not been replaced, and a lot of that was related to budget constraints. And now we had made a commitment, and I had made a commitment 2 years ago to work to bring that back. And I think having it as a county level role makes a great deal of sense, because there are equity needs that permeate our city borders. From transportation is a perfect example. And so I think having someone with that expertise at the county level, at the CCRPC, would benefit the greater community, and is something that is included in this budget proposal. I'd say additionally, as far as answering the second part of your question, on the Chittenden Solid Waste District, I served on the Finance Commission. I think I was in that role for a few years before joining council. Their budget is significantly larger, being a county-wide organization, chartered organization, and having representatives from each of the different towns within the county, nearly each of the towns. So that having been some experience before I even joined council, as well as having 4 years of budget work at the city, under my belt, I feel like that I have some expertise. And outside of that, in my day job, I work on budgets and budget management, forecasting and adjustments, and really keeping a pulse on things day by day, week by week.
So just on that, I'm curious, when you all are sitting at the table crafting the city budget, what are some of the lenses that you're looking at when you're talking about an equity director? Is an equity lens part of that?
Absolutely.
What are other pieces?
Yeah, absolutely. So other things that we're looking at are looking at what are bond commitments, where we are with anticipated projects on the horizon, immediate needs, as well as some of the things that we've been trying to incrementally work towards for maybe the last 5 or 10 years. And being strategic about when we make those investments. So there are needs for the police department, and we're doing some scoping studies on that right now. There are needs to renovate the fire department, and looking at when's the best timing for that, given our other capital projects and current debt service. So that is all part of what we look at and what we consider as we're making the hard decisions.
And what's this tax? Is this a tax rate increase? Is this budget expecting, are folks in Winooski expecting to see a tax increase based on this budget?
It will be a 3.99% increase, yes.
Got it. So on the school budget, now you're not involved as a counselor in crafting the school budget, but folks might want to know, do you support the school budget, and why or why not?
Yeah, I think the school board has done a lot of really hard work, and again, hard decisions. I think they have ended up cutting 4 to 6 positions across, elementary school, middle school, special education, and at the same time, they're accounting for salary, pre-negotiated salary increases as well, healthcare, 12% healthcare increases. So there are some things that are kind of outside our control, or more difficult to manage for. And with the renovations to the school, there's also some increased need for the operations management side of things. So they're accounting for that in this budget as well. I think we are keeping a close eye on the waiting that has people waiting. Thank you. Yeah. That has greatly benefited our community, and keeping a close eye on that at the state level as conversations continue. I would love.
It may or may not change.
It may or may not change. We're there's still a lot of early discussions on that, but I'd like to see more collaboration, and I would invite any of our legislators to come to Winooski and to take a tour of our school and to hear the unique needs of our student body and to really think creatively about how we can address the challenges.
Yeah. Speaking of ballot items, because the city budget is going to be on the ballot, school budget, there are two other ballot items. One that is colloquially known as just cause eviction, and the other is apartheid-free Winooski. Can you give voters a little snapshot on how you weigh in on these items?
Yep. So for context, just cause eviction was a voter-backed petition that came to council. It had enough signatures. Unfortunately, due to some administrative public notice and comment, there was a little bit of an error in just how many days we needed in advance of a hearing last year to get that formally approved. So this is more procedural in nature. It's just like an affirmation or confirmation vote for the legislature. It needs to go through charter review and charter changes at the legislative level. So it was recommended by Vermont League of Cities and Towns to do this procedural vote.
And what's it going to mean to voters of Winooski if they vote yes or no?
Yep. So the language of the petition was written by voters that were putting that forward. I think that there's still some question as to just how it will benefit renters, but the intent is to ensure that there are more hurdles to evict a tenant, and that there's more justification and reasoned justification for evictions. I think we're still in a housing crisis. We're seeing that continue. And while Winooski is working to address the housing crisis needs, I think there's still a great deal of anxiety for our renters about making complaints, health and safety complaints about their property for fear of eviction. So I think the intent of the just cause eviction is to put in some more boundaries and parameters that would make it more difficult to do unjustified evictions.
And apartheid-free Winooski, is that also a voter or community-led initiative?
Yep, and that is at an advisory level. So that petition was brought forward. It secured the required number of votes to be on the ballot. I know that this has come up in a number of other communities. Burlington Council opted not to for a number of reasons. And our city council believed that for the democratic purposes and democratic process to follow in place as intended, that we wanted to make it available to the will of the voters to have their voice heard. So our council did opt to move it forward, whereas some other communities might not have.
Yep. And do you have any thoughts or anything that you want to say specifically about either of those petitions?
I think for just cause eviction, at the Winooski level, I think we're curious to see how that will play out in terms of the language that we're able to adopt and how we can make that effective. So we understand the intent, but how can it be effective? And I think that I put on my policy development lens when I think about this of how do we put that into practice? What does that look like? Who has authority? When and where does it go to courts? All of that side of things. So I think that on that side of things, there's still questions out there for me, but I support it. And then I would also like to see just cause eviction as statewide level, because there are tenants that rent in all different communities, and there are landlords that have properties in all different communities. So it would be nice to see those policies applied statewide for fairness. As far as the apartheid-free, I think that we're seeing a really unfortunate place in our world community where we're not able to see and live in peace. And I think that there are a number of far-right organizations that we're seeing on all sides of the table, and I think that this effort at the voter petition level is an effort to ask for peace.
Got it. Thank you. Speaking about peace and the impact of national and international politics, there's a question here about the efforts of the new presidential administration to end DEI efforts and eliminate protections for transgender people and reduce immigration. And certainly immigrants make up a huge part, and refugees make up a good part of Winooski's community fabric. What do you think the role is of the city, and how are you thinking about this?
Absolutely. And I, as a resident, I listened and participated in the Safe, Healthy, Connected Commission, and our police chief sits on that commission as a liaison. And I brought up policies about fair and impartial policing. I brought up questions about my brother's keeper and policies that are intended to address the institutional racism that we see prevalent often in the police force and police communities. I think our police department and our community has done a great deal to be very intentional about adopting fair and impartial policing. Winooski was one of the first communities in Vermont to adopt sanctuary city policies back in 2016. I think that we need to continue to work to implement and lean into policies that we've adopted, as well as to ensure that we're standing by symbols of equity and inclusion. I think examples of that are the Black Lives Matters flag in the downtown circle, the Progressive Pride flag that we have in the downtown circle, our Abenaki flag. I think it's ensuring that both our symbols of inclusion and belonging and welcoming are shared proudly, but that we continue to work on incorporating our equity assessment into our council decisions, support the school's anti-racism steering committee, and doing what we can to reassure our community that we are a safe place.
I'm going to skip down to the development and change, and then I'm going to give you a chance to choose which of these questions, because we have more questions than we've gotten to.
Yeah.
So Winooski adopted form-based code. That was a few years back to spur development and housing. And what's your impression of the new growth since then? What role would you play to guide future housing and development? And I'll just put that in the context of, I've heard people refer to it as the canyon that you drive through. And I'm wondering, just what's your take on how this is impacting Winooski?
Yeah, so I lived in Seattle. I grew up in New England, but I lived in Seattle for a few years after undergrad and before coming to Vermont for grad school. And I moved just as they were changing their own ordinances and increasing height restrictions. And going back and visiting friends, I mean, it does feel like a changed city. You can feel the height increases. And so I think that's what you're referring to a little bit with the canyon. But I think that there are tweaks and changes. So our planning commission has a number of really dedicated community members and a number of experts that are well-intentioned, not just well-intentioned, but really listen to the community and want to take that feedback and make sure, like, okay, can we adjust those setbacks? Can we make it so that there is more green space between the sidewalk and the building structures, so it doesn't feel as overbearing? And I think that they have done what they could to really incorporate those changes as much as possible.
Does this touch the council? Is this part of your decision making?
It ultimately does. I mean, I think with form-based code, and a number of changes at the legislative level. The Homes Act and the Act 181, Act 250 reforms will basically encompass almost the entire city, our small mile plus square wide city.
It can only go up.
It can only go up.
Yep.
But within the next few years, we should see over 100 new units. And many more that are on the way. I think we're looking at replacement housing ordinance language and evaluating the pros and cons of that. We've looked at additional incentives to negotiate parking minimums to help increase family size housing and some of the other things that we want to prioritize seeing within the city. So I think that other things that we're working towards is ensuring that we're providing for both affordable as well as market rate housing. So there's that missing middle. And with the current workforce challenges, continuation of supply chain challenges, cost of goods, it still continues to be difficult to develop. And I've sat on 2 Joint Housing Commission meetings, both this past fall and just earlier this month, and I think developers, both nonprofit and for-profit, are really expressing how challenging it is to do any develop. So the fact that we're seeing over 100 new units on the near horizon is really wonderful, and we take that into account along with how can we develop in a way that we still have that sense of community and that sense of pride of place that we've had for so long.
Right. So we only have about 30 seconds to a minute, probably not even that long, but you could encompass in what are your top priorities. You got 2 more years, assuming you get your uncontested seat back.
Yep.
What are your top priorities, and then how can folks get in touch with you?
Sure. So I think my priorities continue to be housing access, housing availability, family size housing, economic development to help stabilize our tax rate, ensure that our downtown businesses are full and vibrant and feel supported by our city council, and basic city services. I think we've made some really great improvements, but there's still a lot of need there. For line striping, traffic calming, some of those items I already mentioned. So I'd say those are the top 3. There's many priorities that I have, but I would say that those are the top 3. And I think that my commitment to Winooski to always show up ready, having done my research, talking to community members, and just being committed to being genuine and transparent is what I have brought to the City Council the last 4 years, and what folks can count on me to bring for the next 2 years. If folks want to reach me, they can email me at oakleaf4winooski@gmail.com. And I have a website with the same, oakleaf4winooski.com, and also at City Council, boakleaf@winooskivt.gov.
Great, thank you so much, Bryn, for joining us. Thank you all for tuning into Town Meeting TV, local coverage of candidates, ballot items, etc. And we will be here on March 4th to bring you the results, how folks voted on these local items. You can watch this and more at cctv.org/TMD2025 or at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/townmeetingtv. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to get out there and vote. Go to the city clerk's office or show up at the polls on March 4th, anytime between 7 and 7. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, take care.